Are you confused and overwhelmed about your role in all the craziness that is being a dad? Are you struggling to create the life you hope for? Are you looking for other dads to share your struggles and your triumphs? Or do you just need help waking up in the morning? This is the Wake Up Dad Show.
Hey Dad, and welcome to another episode of the Wake Up Dad Show. I'm Scott Vatcher.
And I'm Dr. Evan, and we're the co-hosts of the Wake Up Dad Show.
In today's show, we explore the 5 P's of dadhood: purpose, power, parenting, providing, and passion. On today's episode specifically, we're going to try and answer a question that has been plaguing dadhood forever. Why are so many dads getting so fat?
Yeah. Do you have any over there in Australia?
Take
that as a yes? Okay.
This is like an unofficial stat, but supposedly Australia is the second fattest nation in the world. Now, my mum.
So you must have just.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say you must have just taken over, or we are got to be a close. We have to be a close second, or we're a close third, I should say.
Had you heard your unofficial stat as well? Second most fat country.
We got to
be
up, and we got to be up there for sure. Absolutely, yeah. It's craziness. Yeah.
Now, of course, we would all guess that if you had to pick a number one, it would be America. Now, supposedly, again, this is supposedly. I've never actually seen the stat, but people throw it around all the time. Is that we in Australia actually have per capita more obese people than America does even. But the people in America who are obese are morbidly obese. So the people are fatter in America, but per capita, Australia has the highest amount of fat people in the whole world. So yes. Now my mum, I was just saying, my mum is visiting over here from Canada, and I live on the Gold Coast, which is a very beach-centric population. You know, I live just a couple of minutes walk from the beach, and you know, when we go for a walk, if we grab a coffee and go for a walk or whatever, Mum is looking around all the time going, man, look at all these fit people. And, you know, I have to agree with her. There's a lot of fit people that we can see around here, but they must be hiding somewhere, because the stats seem to tell us differently. But, there's a lot of fattos, a lot of fat people.
So it's interesting, like, because in the States, their climate is a lot better than it is in Canada. They, especially the southern states, they have temperatures where they can be really, essentially active outdoors all year round. And the USA, yes, definitely, there's a very high percentage of people that are overweight. So it's like, I believe it's up in the 60% of people are overweight in the U.S. and the number of obese people is, I think it's like between 25 or 33%, something along those lines. Anyways, I mean, as a listener, it's not like we need to milk the cow too long. That it's a trend that's been that's noticed, and maybe a first place to start, Scott, would be what is the implications of being overweight? Because it's not just a cosmetic issue. There's a lot of things that it can cause. What are those things? What are some of the things that it can cause?
Well, I think it will always come back to, and we're going to, I guess, dive a little bit more deeper and more specifically into dads and some of the reasons why and some of the things that we can do as dads to change that. But really, I think the biggest implication behind obesity is the inflammatory process that it basically is involved in. So if you have all of this extra weight, then it's going to be causing significantly higher levels of low-level inflammation in your body. And it's actually a bit of a catch-22, because the low-level inflammation can then be a cause of obesity that a lot of people aren't aware of as well. So it is a bit of a downward spiral, and this low-grade inflammation or low level of inflammation is actually the number one cause of death. So it will be a contributing factor to all of the diseases that we know of that are high in the stats: your heart disease, your cancer, your stroke, your diabetes, your neurodegenerative conditions, your Parkinson's, your Alzheimer's. All of those basically are related back to a low level or low grade inflammation inside the body. And when there's that much extra tissue happening at a hormonal level as well, it just signals that constant inflammatory process. And it's really a big part of what makes us feel so rubbishy when we're big. So it's a huge, huge problem in today's world, and I think sort of unknown as well. You know, I'm just carrying around a bit of extra weight, I'll get rid of it one day, and one day never comes around, and then you wonder how all of these chronic diseases start to invade your body, so to speak. Oh my God, it just happened to me. It's like, no, it didn't just happen to you. There's a reason for everything. There's a reason why this is occurring. And it's a big problem.
It's a huge problem. And you talked about the major diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and there's the other ones too, like things that drastically impact our quality of life. So it could be inflammatory digestive system. It could be intolerances or allergies to certain things, because if our body's very inflammatory and it's reacting to a lot of things, then the tendency is that we start reacting to foods that before we didn't react to. So then we start having limiting what we're eating. Joint problems. That's another big one. So, go to the gym sometime and pick up 2 25-pound weights, one in each hand, and just hold them for like a minute, and just imagine yourself 50 pounds heavier, or imagine yourself 50 pounds lighter. To take that amount of weight off your spine, off your knees, off your hips, it's a massive difference. So definitely there's a whole range of health concerns, and these are real concerns. These aren't just like, it might happen. No, like the chances of these things happening are so significantly higher because of obesity, that, or even just being overweight, that it's really something that has to be addressed if somebody wants to live not only a longer life, or like a life that they could be living, but also to live a life that has higher quality. So we're talking about longevity and quality of life at the same time, and that being overweight, it's very safe to say, is going to decrease life expectancy and decrease quality of life. Do you agree, Scott?
Oh, there's no doubt about it that those will have significant impacts on everything in life. How long you live, your quality of life, your expectation of what you can do for yourself and for your kids. So maybe before we go a little bit further, you've mentioned overweight and obese, and so basically if you want to think about it on a scale of a BMI, body mass index, so it gives you an idea, although I will say that I'm not the biggest fan of BMI. I think it fits for most people, but if you are, for example, if you've got a lot of muscle, then you could show up on an overweight or obese scale on this particular finding, even though it's absolutely not true. So it's not the greatest for everybody, but I think for most people, it's a pretty good scale. And so then your BMI, if you are greater than 25 on that scale, then you're considered to be overweight. And if you are greater than 30 on that scale, you are considered to be obese. And I'm not sure off the top of my head, morbidly obese, if there's a number for that. But if you're getting into anywhere near the 25, 30 plus range on this BMI, then you're really going to want to watch out in the way that you are doing things, because it's going to significantly impact your life. And so how you calculate that is you get your weight in kilograms, and then you divide it by your height in meters squared. So that is the measurement that you can use to determine what your BMI is. Now, mine, I don't know off the top of my head. I should calculate it out and find out exactly where I'm at the moment. But I tend to be more on the muscular side. Yeah. So my BMI is a little bit higher. My guess is Ev's BMI is somewhere around 4. And
it's pretty low.
just a little bit lower than mine. So, you want to be in that healthy range of BMI, definitely below the 25. So if you do that, get your measurement of, we'll put this in the show notes, kilograms divided by measurement of your height in meters squared. And if you're anywhere near the 25 plus range, these are the dads we're talking to out there. These are the ones that we really want to make some significant changes with, because if you don't, and the longer you wait, the harder it gets. There's no doubt about that. Have you got any thoughts about that, with you being the oldie that you are, the old person that you are, as you get older and being more difficult? I'm joking here, because you just Ev's one of those lucky ones, I'll tell you. He works hard, don't get me wrong, but I work hard too, and I don't have abs like this guy does.
You do. You just don't see them quite the same. That's all.
Oh yeah, that helps, Ev. That's very comforting. Thanks, mate. That's so awesome. I feel so much better right now.
All right. So, sorry.
What's that?
Yeah. So I've got some stats here that I wanted to share with the audience. So I just pulled these up, and I think it's important to really grasp the problem that's happening here, because this is a trend that's happening globally, and as we said, it's decreasing life expectancy, it's decreasing quality of life, and it's causing a lot of suffering as well, because when people get hit with any of these diseases, cancer being one of them that really causes a lot of suffering in a family, there's a major impact on the entire family. So we're really having this conversation because we care about dads, and when dads aren't around, like I lost my dad when I was 17 years old. So my dad was 45. He died of cancer. He wasn't he wasn't overweight and he wasn't obese. However, he got cancer, and I would do anything to reduce my chances to of having cancer. Having gone through that experience, it was just a terrible, terrible experience. So, and anybody, I would imagine most of the listeners on this call have experienced somebody or known of somebody going through the cancer process. So we're going to get into some real strategies, but first I just want to hit on some of the real numbers around the world, just to show how big this problem is. So this is research that's been done globally. There's an estimated 640 million adults worldwide and 110 million children categorized as obese. That's not overweight, that's obese. So 640 million adults and 110 million children. In Canada, it's 1 in 4 adults are obese, and it's just and 500,000 kids in Canada are dealing with it. So
how many kids again?
Canadians, 500,000 in Canada, and our population is only like 33 million or something like that. So it's pretty unbelievable. But let's talk about like what is going on here. Like, it's been a trend that's been happening. I think it was really getting some traction when I was in university. So that would have been a long time ago now, but over 20 years ago, really started to get some traction, and it's really picked up momentum. It's really picked up momentum, and it's become something that the people are trying all different kinds of things. Things aren't working. There's some underlying issues that aren't going to go away anytime soon, which I believe are the reasons. And I believe those reasons aren't actually being addressed by the current strategies, most of them anyways.
So, we may have some differing opinions here as well. So this will be interesting for us to have a chat about this. I think that, there's too many factors to even account for, and there's so many unknowns. But to me, it still will come down to overall, and again, like I said, this is not the case in every single person's world. This is not the be-all and end-all, but the basics, like the absolute basics, comes down to what you're putting into your body and what you're doing with your body. Simple as that. Mm-hmm. Now, for example, hormones play a dramatic impact on that. But in reality, what you're putting in your body and what you're doing to your body will have the most dramatic impact on hormones than anything else. So it sort of will come down to the same thing. So basics is, that old saying of calories in, calories out. It's not that simple, but to a certain degree, that's the real issue. Now, I think that's more the symptom. Like there's symptom on symptom, and then there's the underlying issue, which I think comes down to self-esteem. I think that's the bottom line for almost everybody who's in that range, is that for some reason or another they don't think they're good enough or important enough to take care of themselves to that degree, and so they let themselves slide. And then the problem with that is, one of the many problems is that then your kids adopt the same thing, and that's why there's so many obese and overweight kids in the world today as well, because how else would that happen besides what we're doing? Like, your kids, to a certain degree, as they get older, will make their own choices. But in the beginning, for the first many years, they're basically eating and doing what you're eating and doing. It's the same thing. So this is an ongoing issue, and it will just continue to get worse unless we really, really address it. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts, Ed?
So the high level points here are, number one, we gotta look at what is going into our mouths, and we have to look at how we're moving our body, and we also have to look at how we're thinking. So those are the three main ones. Now, so I'm going to dive into what we're putting into our body first. So there's some things that I think have changed significantly when we look at our generation versus the generation before us. And these are facts. These aren't things that are really debatable in Canada, at least, or in the U.S. I don't know if it is for Australia, so you can tell me. But one of the main things that's happened is that our food supply and the way people are eating and making choices have drastically changed. So, how about you, Scott? Has your food supply and the quality of your food supply been altered?
Oh, I think there would no doubt be that. I don't have any stats or anything specific on that, but I would think without a doubt that that's happening. The whole movement away from just the idea of real food, let alone, I think partly what you're getting at is the nutritional quality that is in the food that we're eating. I just think even most people are not even trying to eat the real food part. They're just eating a lot of not real food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's two challenges. One is that, you know, even if you are eating from the grocery store, you know, the way that the food supply is made now, a lot of the nutrients that we would expect to be there and to make us feel amazing and for our body to tick the way it's supposed to tick and all that stuff. You know, people that are eating healthy, quote unquote, so they're making the meals and that sort of thing. They are still finding that they're lacking energy, or they're having cravings, or you know, relying on the coffee or something like that. And I'm seeing it all the time now.
Don't diss my coffee, man.
You know, yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to go there, man. I've already commented on the app, so I'm done. No, I'm just. I actually don't know what your abs look like, so I'm just gonna tell the viewers that was a unqualified cut there, so I don't really know.
You don't remember last night, Evan?
So just to let everybody know, we are a few thousand miles.
Digression.
So yeah. So this really, you know, this change in the food supply has really come from the actual way food is grown. So the basic things that, you know, how our food supply was grown before, like we didn't have all these pesticides and herbicides and larvicides and all these different sides that were being sprayed onto our crops, which was really to increase the yield of the crop, so we get more on the grocery store shelves, hence more profits for these shareholders that you know are investing in these food companies. But what ends up happening is that it sterilizes the soil. So the soil is supposed to be alive, it's supposed to have bacteria in there and so on. That helps to break the inorganic rock mineral into an organic rock mineral. The plant eats that, we ate the plant, but that whole process has changed because we're killing all those bacteria with these sides, and so, but man knows, like, well, we still have to like get nutrients into the soil and that sort of thing. And before, they used to rotate crops, so they used to rotate crops, and that would actually help to refertilize the soil. They stopped doing that, so now it's same crop, same soil, same crop, same soil. You know, using pesticides on it to maintain yield, but then you get a sick crop, so they have to like fertilize the soil. But man is so smart that they know that that plant only needs a certain spectrum of nutrients in order to make it grow. Whereas us as human beings, we need like this much larger spectrum of nutrients. And so the companies, they just spray with the fertilizer that makes that red pepper look like red pepper, whatever the example is. And so we expect it to have everything, the full spectrum, when we eat it. And so we're kind of getting duped, so to speak, because we're expecting our grocery stores to have the foods in it. They're going to give us what we need. And so, you know, for somebody like me who's grown up on whole foods my whole life, and, you know, when I went through the student period where I was eating definitely less dense nutritional whole foods, I was still eating whole foods, but less of it was dense in nutrition. I was completely lacking. You know, I was napping almost every day. I was stressed out of my mind. I was crashing between meals. Like, I had a lot of stuff going on, but it kind of just happened slowly over time. And I started to become really addicted to carbohydrates specifically. And, you know, when I grew up with, you know, my dad, we had, you know, like typical meal, like, you know, potato with chicken and peas or corn or broccoli, or, you know, we had maybe pork chop or steak or whatever, like, you know, and then I had like, you know, a packed lunch, these sorts of things. Like, it was a pretty typical like Canadian diet. But what I'm trying to say is that isn't really cutting it, because that was leading me down a path that was destructive. And even though I wasn't gaining weight, I wasn't healthy inside, and it was really coming down to the nutrient factor. So what this leads to is, if we're missing any nutrient, any micronutrient, like any trace mineral or anything like that, then our body starts to scavenge for it. And especially if somebody is reaching for fast foods, it's even worse. So there's even less nutrients in those. And so many people now, they'll like skip a meal or they'll grab fast food once or twice a day, and then they'll say like maybe one meal they actually eat from the grocery store, and they're not supplementing and all this. Well, the tendency is that they're going to have some serious cravings. And I don't know about you, Scott, but I don't know anybody that can beat cravings. Like
they're tough.
They're tough. Anybody I know of that gets cravings, it's an innate thing. It's like the body needs something, and so the body wins. You know, whenever the body has a need, it wins. And the problem is most people don't reach for kale, they don't reach for spinach, they don't reach for supplements or anything like that. Or protein or those sorts of things. They reach for comfort foods, and those are loaded with a lot of calories. Again, almost no nutrition, and it creates this vicious cycle. So the food supply is a contributing factor to the whole thing. And so you get these people that are eating massive amounts of calories, but very low in nutrition. And so they're finding that people that are like massively obese are actually nutritionally deficient. And that's a huge wake-up call. They were actually finding out that these obese people were nutritionally deficient, like nutritionally bankrupt, and they're massive, like the 500 pounds, 600 pounds. So it just goes to show that, that it's just the food that they were choosing didn't have nutrients in it. So what Scott's saying is it's so important to be, choosing foods that are nutritionally dense and also meeting our caloric needs. We got to be doing both. So we have to know what is our caloric needs, but what is our nutritional needs? What's in those foods? And so now, basically my mandate is, what I recommend to people is to combine eating whole foods, which is like grocery store bought food, from the best source that you can afford, and also supplementing on top of that. Because we can't guarantee that the nutrients are in our food. We can hope they are, but the supplementation helps to fill any gaps, so to make sure that we're guaranteeing. And what we find is, at least what I've been finding, is that when people do that, their cravings subside, and then they become more constructive in their choices, and they don't become a victim to food. When we become a victim to food, that's a big problem. Now, there's one more point, I'll turn it back to you, Scott, is that a lot of these food companies, they actually put things into the food to make it addictive, and they especially do this in the fast food industry. So they're so smart now, they know that there's certain things that if they put them in there, it'll increase your likelihood that you're going to go back to that. And so when I'm helping somebody shift their nutritional habits, sometimes they actually go through a period where their body's adjusting, and it's actually slightly uncomfortable for them to go through this because their body's letting go of addictions to some of these things as they're moving towards a healthier state. This is very important. So as people make healthy choices, it can be uncomfortable, and it may not actually feel that good. So there's this little period there where it's just knowing that not always does making good changes always feel comfortable. And it's like any growth. I don't know any growth actually that is comfortable. There's a little bit of uncomfortableness there. So if there's any dads that are considering making changes and making some adjustments, maybe getting on a program or that sort of thing, there may be a little phase there where it's uncomfortable. Scott, any thoughts on food supply and what I've been chatting about?
Well, it comes to mind a little saying that I like to use: if getting healthy was easy, everyone would do it. And so,
Yes.
it's not a simple process. And another way I like to describe it is, okay, if your grandmother can't pronounce it, it's probably not real food. So just go with, the simplicity of things. Go with an array of vegetables, right? The different colors are different nutrients in there. Purples and greens and yellows and, all those different colors give us different nutrients, macro and micronutrients that we need in order to be healthy. And so the other side to that equation is exercise, right? So And really, again, back in the day, we didn't call it exercise, we just called it life. And we had to do more on a physical nature. But in today's world, I know the stat for Australia, the average Australian sits somewhere between 12 to 14 hours per day on average. So it's an enormous amount of our time that's taken up, if you think from everything from eating your meals to your workplace, to driving to and from your workplace, to sitting in front of a television, to using your social media, et cetera, et cetera. It's all sitting down. So, exercise can be used in so many different ways. If you want to become an elite level athlete, then you need to make exercise a dramatic portion of your life, and you need to do numerous things that you don't need to do if you just want to use exercise / movement to be healthier. There's a big difference between the two, and I think so many people get caught up and they're comparing themselves to a professional athlete or an elite athlete to some description, or even like the neighbor next door who for some reason or another is able to exercise and loves it and whatever the case is, and then says, oh, well, I can't do that, so I'm not doing anything. And so really you just want to step it up that little bit and start moving your body in some way. And just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Because what I find, being a chiropractor, is I see a lot of people who come in to the practice who've hurt themselves from starting out an exercise program. And typically what happens is their mind is willing, but the body isn't ready yet. It's an old saying that I use. It's like going for a run on a broken leg. Don't take a body that hasn't exercised in 20 years and go to a CrossFit class, right? It's just too much for the body to handle. It needs to be a slower process. And same with change in food. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just needs to be a shift in the right direction. And it's a process. Well, it's lifelong. Anything to do with health is not an event. It's a process. No. And it's a lifelong process, How long do you have to brush your teeth for? The rest of your life, right? So it's a process over time. And so we didn't even really address what I talked about earlier, which I think is the underlying process of all of it, which is this idea of self-esteem and the fact that we don't think we're good enough to put in that effort for ourselves. And as a dad out there, if that's the case, you may not even be aware of it. You may be just self-sabotaging because you don't think you're worth it. Or you may place the importance higher on other things. Again, as a dad, you may be placing a higher importance on trying to have your kids be healthier at the expense of your health. Or in this particular instance, what we're talking about in being overweight or obese. And I think that's the biggest mistake you could possibly make. Because again, kids will do what you do, not what you say. And if you are not an example of health to your kid, they're going to grow up and they're going to do exactly what you do. They're not going to do what you say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm a poster child for not taking care of myself for a while. And number one, I think, just to be transparent with the audience. So there was a period there where our kids were, we had our first two 18 months apart, and then we had our third one 2.5 years after that. So we had a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a newborn, basically. And there was a period there for about 7 years where, I definitely put myself last. I was making money first, and I was not engaging in nearly enough exercise. I was skipping meals. I wasn't eating well. When I was eating, I was staying up late, wasn't getting good sleep. I was stressed out, and I didn't have, and at the time, I was a chiropractor, and so I'm trying to help people, with their health, and I'm just giving, and my cup was completely empty. And it got to the point that my health got so bad that I ended up in the hospital, and it ended up that everybody had to pull up the slack for me. I became a burden really on the family because my health was so bad.
More of a liability than an asset.
Exactly. There's a huge cost to not taking care of ourselves, and the thinking that I'm doing the right things and then I'm putting family first. Now that I look back at to say that to all dads, like you have to create habits at some point in your life. You don't have to. I mean, it's wise to. It's questions are. It's like taking inventory. Like what is your value? Is your value to be a dad that's going to be there for your kids long term? And it really questions like what you're getting back to is mindset. Like, is it even worth it? Am I even worth it to put it in there? And just think of like how important you are to your kids. Like when you aren't there, for your kids, like even if you're there and you're not there, but like if you're not there for your kids, like you're physically not there because you've left the planet, it's a huge cost to your children. And I can say this because I've gone through it. Our kids need us, and there's statistics out there on kids that don't have their fathers in their lives, and there's earlier pregnancy rates, higher obesity rates, lower poorer grades, less income. They don't make as much money. Like there's so many different statistics that show that the dad in the family is a very important part of the family dynamic. So what is important to you? I think that's the underlying question. Because I think in order to drive change, we need to align it with something that is emotionally important to us, something that we really truly value. Because this is not an event. This is not like getting ready for a wedding and losing 30 pounds and the wedding's over and the event's over and you go back to the old ways. No, this is like talking about things like, I want to be an amazing grandpa. I want to be there for my grandchildren. I want to be the best dad I can be. I want to be an example for my family. Like, what do you value? And from there, you can make those decisions that, and carry those decisions through because it's based on values. You're now making your choices based on values and bouncing off, everything you're doing on that. And that's going to help you stay the course when things are maybe a little bit more difficult and you're making, choices that are somewhat uncomfortable. So yeah, definitely, taking inventory is number one. And like Scott said, it's developing that desire to take care of yourself. And I think, again, it comes back to values and creating a vision for yourself in your life that inspires you, and actually moving towards that. Thoughts about that, Scott?
Well, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about creating or developing habits, and so I just want to elaborate on that a little bit, and then we are going way over on regular show time, so we'll start to clue it up. But it's about the idea of habits, and really, if you think about it, guys, we've already got habits. Every single one of us. It's just a matter of seeing if those habits are in line with what we actually want to get out of life. Because most of those habits have been put in place by default. They're there for some reason or not because whatever happened, and it's something that you've always done, quote unquote, because it's just the way it is. And you need to have a look at that, take stock, and see, okay, all right, this is a habit, yep, I do this every single day or every single week or whatever, and it's like, okay, is this habit moving me in the right direction or the wrong direction? Because that's really the key to it all, and in reality, most of the habits you will know straight away. If you look at that, and if you actually sort of consciously look at it, I guess I'll call it, you'll know whether or not, for the most part. There might be a few hidden ones here and there that might not be quite as obvious, but in reality, those aren't the ones that have the most bang for your buck, the most dramatic impact. It's the big ones, the ones that are detrimental, that need to change if you want to be more in line with where you want to get in life. If you're happy where you are, great. Keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if there's areas, and in particular in this area around your physicality, your fitness, your level of fat storage, etc., if that's not where you want it to be, then take stock and figure out what needs to change. Because obviously the habits that you are doing at the moment are not working.
Absolutely.
So do you have any last closing ideas that we want to chat with about dads before we clue up this episode?
Yeah, well, I think this would be a good one to continue. There's a few more things we can dive into, but one of the things I just wanted to point out is when we look at diet and we look at exercise as ways to lose weight, a lot of people will turn to exercise first, and they'll get a gym membership and they'll go there expecting to get results. As Scott says, sometimes, we'll jump in and we'll go too hard, too fast. But really, you got to set expectations that are realistic. And I'm just going to do you a favor here and tell you that exercise is not going to give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to losing weight. It's going to be what you put in your mouth and what you don't put in your mouth. That's going to give you the most bang for your buck. So if you don't change your diet and you go into the gym, the chances are that you're going to get frustrated and you're going to quit the gym because you're not seeing the results that you expect. Before you do that, quitting the gym, make changes with your diet and make small changes, and add one change onto the next. And we'll talk more about nutrition and how to eat, basically, because it's not something we're actually really taught. We sort of are, but we might have been taught a lot of the wrong things, especially depending on our how we were raised. So, but yeah, that's just a little tidbit there. If you're going to run to the gym and start that and not change your diet, it may lead to frustration. So just before you quit the gym, make the changes in the diet and add the two together and then stick with that. And then you'll see some really positive changes. That's it for me, buddy.
Cool. And I'll just add in that basically the choices we make, whether it be around food or around exercise and movement, all come back to what do we truly think of ourselves? Are we worth it? And so I think that'll be a good way to end the show today, is to, dads, take stock, really sit down and ask yourself that one question. Am I worth it? And be honest with yourself.
The answer is...
Well, I know it.
Yes.
Well, it may be, but I really want dads to be honest with themselves, because in reality, the answer is, of course, the answer is yes. But do you think that? Do you believe it? Because if you just go, "Oh, you're worth it," yeah, of course I am. But if you sit down and truly, truly think about that question, and if it is an area, say you do have 50 or 100 or 150 or 200 pounds or whatever to lose, then you really want to start looking at that question in a deeper detail, because I bet you if you dig deep enough, there will be something in there that will be life transformational to have you make that switch. Because in reality, changing up the food and the exercise is easy. Right?
It is.
In reality, if you get the mindset right. So let's leave it at that for this episode. Dad signing off. Have a great time. We'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time, guys.
Do you want to know more about the Wake Up Dad movement? Go to www.thewakeupdadshow.com to download any and all past issues of the show. Claim your free gift? Continue the conversation on the Facebook group Wake Up Dad. Share this podcast with other dads on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure to subscribe to the show and give us a rating so we can reach more dads. And dads, one last thing. Wake up!